Have you ever reached the end of a week and realized you barely remember any of it? Not because nothing happened, but because everything passed too quickly to feel real. You woke up, checked your phone, answered messages, moved between screens, finished tasks, watched videos, listened to music, spoke to people, and somehow the entire day disappeared almost instantly. Modern life moves so fast now that many people no longer experience moments fully. They experience fragments, small pieces of attention scattered across hundreds of things every day. A conversation while checking notifications, a meal while scrolling, music while thinking about work. Even rest becomes multitasking, and slowly, people stop noticing how mentally absent they've become. Not physically absent, emotionally absent. You can sit in a room with people while your attention exists somewhere else entirely. You can walk through an entire city without truly observing anything around you. You can spend hours consuming information without remembering most of it afterward, because attention is no longer resting anywhere long enough to create presence. And maybe that's why time feels faster now, because the brain remembers meaningful moments differently. Moments with focus, emotion, stillness, awareness. But modern attention rarely stays still long enough for those moments to fully form anymore. Everything competes for your attention now. Every app, every notification, every screen, every algorithm designed to keep the mind moving continuously. And eventually, constant movement becomes normal. Silence feels unusual. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Doing only one thing starts feeling uncomfortable. So people keep stimulating the brain, even during moments that once felt peaceful. Waiting in line becomes scrolling. Walking becomes scrolling. Eating becomes scrolling. Even lying in bed becomes another form of consumption. And over time, the mind begins losing connection with the present moment itself. Not dramatically, quietly, slowly, until entire weeks begin feeling emotionally blurred together. And maybe that's the strangest part of modern life. People are connected to everything constantly, yet fully present almost nowhere. The human brain was never designed to focus on this many things at once. For most of history, attention had limits. People experienced fewer interruptions, fewer voices competing for mental space, fewer sudden shifts in focus every few seconds. But modern technology changed the structure of attention completely. Now, the average person switches focus constantly throughout the day. Phone, conversation, notification, music, video, thought, screen, another screen. And the brain keeps adapting to this rhythm until fragmented attention starts feeling normal. But attention fragmentation has consequences because focus is deeply connected to emotional experience. The longer the brain stays with something, the more real it feels emotionally. That's why certain memories from childhood still feel vivid years later. Your attention was fully there. Moments lasted longer internally. The brain absorbed them deeply. But modern life rarely allows that kind of uninterrupted presence anymore. Everything pulls attention away before experience fully settles. Even entertainment moves faster now. Shorter clips, faster editing, constant stimulation. The brain barely has time to emotionally process one thing before the next thing appears. And slowly, attention stops feeling intentional. It becomes reactive. The mind begins operating automatically, always responding, always scanning, always anticipating something new. That's why many people struggle to focus deeply now. Not because they became less intelligent, but because their nervous systems adapted to constant interruption. The brain becomes trained for novelty instead of stillness, quick stimulation instead of sustained awareness. And over time, ordinary moments begin feeling emotionally weaker by comparison. because real life moves slower than digital stimulation. A sunset does not compete with an algorithm. Silence does not compete with endless scrolling. Human conversation does not compete with infinite novelty. And eventually, the nervous system begins craving stimulation even during calm moments. People unlock their phones without thinking, open apps automatically, switch between screens unconsciously, not because they truly want something specific, but because the brain became uncomfortable with mental stillness. And maybe that's why so many people now feel mentally exhausted all the time. Because attention was never meant to remain fragmented from morning until midnight. The brain keeps processing movement continuously, even during moments that appear quiet externally. And eventually, mental noise becomes the background state of modern life itself. One of the strangest effects of constant distraction is how it changes emotional reality itself. Life begins feeling less vivid, not necessarily sad, not necessarily empty, just distant, like there's a thin layer between you and the moment you're living in. And most people don't notice this happening immediately because overstimulation feels normal now. The brain stays busy constantly, always processing something, always consuming something, always reacting to something. But emotional presence requires slowness. The mind needs time to fully absorb experiences, to notice details, to feel atmosphere, to emotionally register moments while they're happening. And modern life rarely gives people that space anymore. That's why entire months can disappear so quickly now. The brain remembers emotionally significant moments more clearly than repetitive stimulation. But when every day becomes filled with fragmented attention, memories begin blending together. Days feel shorter, weeks feel blurred. Even meaningful experiences pass too quickly to fully settle emotionally. You can travel somewhere beautiful and still feel mentally distracted. You can sit with people you care about, while part of your attention remains somewhere else. You can listen to music without truly hearing it, because the modern brain rarely focuses completely on one experience anymore. Part of the mind is always anticipating the next thing, the next notification, the next distraction, the next interruption, and eventually, people stop experiencing life directly. They experience it partially, through divided attention, through background stimulation, through mental exhaustion. That's why so many people feel disconnected from the present moment now. Not because life lost beauty, but because attention became too scattered to fully notice it. And maybe that's why nighttime feels emotionally different for so many people. Because when distractions finally slow down, the brain briefly notices how mentally distant everything has started to feel. The silence becomes heavier, thoughts become clearer, emotions become louder, and suddenly, people realize how rarely they spend time fully present with themselves anymore. There was a time when human life moved with natural pauses, long walks, quiet evenings, moments of waiting without stimulation. Silence existed everywhere. And because silence existed, the mind had space to recover. But modern life removed many of those pauses completely. Now people move from one form of stimulation directly into another. Work becomes scrolling. Scrolling becomes videos. Videos become music. Music becomes notifications. The brain rarely experiences true stillness anymore, even during rest. That's why so many people feel mentally tired all the time now, because the nervous system remains active almost constantly. Not physically active, mentally active, always processing, always anticipating, always reacting. And eventually, the brain forgets how to slow down naturally. Stillness begins feeling unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. That's why many people reach for their phones during the smallest moments of silence. Waiting for an elevator, sitting in a car, walking alone, standing in line. Moments that once allowed the brain to breathe are now filled instantly with stimulation. And over time, the mind loses its tolerance for quietness completely. People become afraid of boredom, afraid of silence, afraid of sitting alone with thought for too long. Because once external noise disappears, internal noise becomes easier to hear. Unprocessed emotions, stress, loneliness, regret, mental exhaustion, things distraction temporarily hides during the day. And maybe that's why modern life feels emotionally overwhelming sometimes. Not because humans suddenly became weaker, but because the brain was never designed to exist in continuous stimulation without recovery. The nervous system needs contrast, noise and silence, movement and stillness, attention and rest. But modern life keeps attention activated constantly. So even peaceful moments begin feeling mentally crowded. And eventually, people stop knowing what real calmness feels like anymore. Not distraction disguised as relaxation. Not entertainment disguised as rest. Real mental stillness. The kind where the brain no longer feels pulled in 100 different directions at once. And maybe that's why silence feels so strange now. Because deep down, the modern mind has forgotten how to exist without noise. Maybe that's the real cost of modern life. Not just distraction, but disconnection. People wake up connected to the entire world instantly. It slowly lose connection with themselves. The mind keeps moving constantly, from one screen to another, one thought to another, one piece of stimulation replacing the previous one endlessly. And eventually, silence begins feeling unnatural. Not because silence changed, but because the modern brain became unfamiliar with it. That's why truly calm moments feel so rare now. The kind of calmness where nothing is demanding your attention. No notifications, no scrolling, no noise, just stillness. For many people, that experience almost feels uncomfortable at first because the brain keeps expecting stimulation to arrive. Another sound, another update, another distraction. But maybe the human mind was never supposed to live this way continuously. Maybe attention was meant to rest sometimes. Maybe thoughts were meant to slow down. Maybe silence was never the enemy, just unfamiliar. And maybe that's why so many people feel emotionally exhausted now. Not because life became meaningless, but because the brain never fully stops processing the world around it anymore. Even during rest, even during quiet moments, part of the mind remains active constantly, waiting, scanning, consuming, reacting. And over time, people begin losing the feeling of being fully present inside their own lives. Days pass faster, moments feel shorter, memories feel weaker, and the mind slowly drifts further away from stillness. Maybe that's why nighttime feels different. Because late at night, when the world finally becomes quieter, people briefly reconnect with something modern life keeps interrupting during the day. Their own thoughts, their own emotions, their own mental noise. And maybe beneath all the scrolling, all the stimulation, all the endless movement, the brain is still searching for the same thing humans have always needed: a moment of real quiet, a moment where attention finally stops running, a moment where the mind no longer feels pulled everywhere at once. Just stillness, real stillness. And maybe that's why nobody feels fully present anymore.